So when you think of freedom, what do you think about? Is it time freedom, financial freedom, location freedom, all three of them? It can be all of them. You know, when I think of freedom, I know I think of all three of them. I think of my time freedom. I don't want to follow a 9 to 6 schedule. I think about my location freedom. I don't want to have to be in an office or in one spot. I want to be able to travel whenever I want. Financial freedom. I want to be able to live the life that I want comfortably, not worry about a $5 coffee or going out to eat. I want that freedom, and I think that's okay. That's actually great. Like, that's the first step in actually making progress towards it, is knowing that you want that freedom. And the great thing in today's economy and how everything is with technology, everyone actually has the ability to do that. I think there's something innate in us that craves this freedom. There's something very human about wanting to pursue freedom and not wanting to be weighed down in any of these areas. And for me, I know that's always been the case ever since I was a kid. I remember when I was a kid, I didn't want to do just one thing. I didn't want to be tied down in anything. I remember when I was very young, like 8, I wanted to, at the time, I think, be a professional tennis player that was also a writer that was traveling the world doing both of those things. So from a very young age, I wanted to have location freedom, time freedom, because neither one of those are bonded on exact schedules, and financial freedom to be able to do all that. And I think all of us have that in us, and I think it's about figuring out how to get there. And I know for me, that's something that I've been pursuing always, you know, not even just as a kid and after, like, professional tennis in a lot of ways would have fulfilled a lot of those things if at a high level, if I had gotten to something like a top 100, which I didn't. But that was also, it hit all those boxes, right? Because it's location freedom, you're traveling year round. There's time freedom, you're playing your matches, everything's different every week. Financial freedom. So even that, it makes sense. That was what I would pursue as well, because that type of freedom has always been really important to me. But then when professional tennis didn't work out, and I kind of had to pivot and figure it out, you know. And I initially started at a company. I lasted 3 months. It was just, I couldn't stand it. Like, the whole 9 to 6 thing, it was just soul crushing. I hated it. I just felt like this isn't life. Like, I don't want to live my life like this at all. So pretty soon after those 3 months, I started my own company. At the time, it was a car logistics company, which very interesting that I did that. And that's a longer story, but it was basically international car logistics for like old-timer cars, which sounds cool, but at the same time, I had zero interest in cars, and I'm still not a car person. So it really wasn't something that I was passionate about. But what I did want and was passionate about was all those freedoms I've talked about, and that gave me that. When I started that business, initially it was very hard, of course, and you're spending a lot of time. But pretty soon, I'd say in 6 months, I was pretty much on my way already to have all those freedoms. And I did. I traveled a lot during that time. This was before I was married, so I was single. So I would traveling, go stay at a country for a month, and I would do another month somewhere else, and I was doing this for a couple of years, and thanks to really entrepreneurship, it gave me all those freedoms. So I started then, and then I kind of got hooked, and then of course once you have that, you want to pursue more what you're passionate about. So that's when I started trying to figure that out and shifting into different areas, and that's trial and error, you know. I think one of the biggest mistakes that people make is trying to find their passion on the first go around. And if you're lucky enough, great, you know, but most people will have to do trial and error. There's not like personality tests in school or quizzes that will tell you what your one passion is, even though that's what a lot of people search. They want to just be told what their thing is to pursue. Realistically, you're going to have to do that with trial and error, and it'll change probably, you know. I mean, some people are passionate about one thing their whole life, but a lot of people change, you know. Maybe you love something for 5 years and then that changes, and now you pursue something else 10 years. So it evolves and changes throughout your life, and I think that's important to remember, so that keep trialing and error, and you also realize that that's not a waste of time. Because I know for me, I did a lot of different things after that. I went to social media marketing at one point, LinkedIn outreach. I think I even tried to be a travel content creator for a bit. That didn't work out very well. So I tried a little bit of everything, because I was trying to figure out what I was passionate about and what I cared about. And none of that was a waste, because all those skills now have translated into helping what I'm doing even now. Like right now, I know my passion is wanting to make films, making films. That's something I'm very passionate about. And maybe that changes in 10 years, who knows? I don't think so, because I feel like I've always been passionate about storytelling and movies. It could, and that's okay. But all those skills that I've learned in the past, I'm using all of those right now to help that, and it's been a huge advantage. I think it's going to speed up my trajectory in that area way quicker than if I had done nothing before and just starting in this, because I have all these skills. And it's also, remember, when you're pursuing these freedoms, that they also change in what priority you have. Maybe when you're young, some will have location freedom as their number one priority, which makes sense. You want to travel a lot. That was my number one for a long time. But then now, I wouldn't say location freedom is as important to me. It's still important, but not as important. Like, I traveled a lot, and I'm not right now, at least in a stage of my life, that don't want to travel as much. Like, I want to build something more now. Location freedom has probably dropped down to 3 for me now. Whereas in financial freedom, I feel like I have currently. So that's also kind of dropped down. So I'd say, right now, I'd say what I'm pursuing now is really more meaning than just purely these freedoms, but the order can change of all of these. If I had to say which one was like probably number one for me right now, I'd say probably time freedom is number one. And I have a significant amount of time freedom, but that's something I'm always trying to optimize more, try to optimize more into being able to pursue and do more of the things that I really want to do. And you're always doing some things that you don't necessarily want to do, like admin work, answering a bunch of emails. And you can get to more outsourcing those as you go along, which is obviously what I'm trying to do and optimize for. But you're not going to usually have 100% of your time that you're doing everything that you want to do. Like, if you get to an 80-20, like you're doing 80% of the time, you're doing stuff that you want, 20% you're not, or 90-10, I think those are great ratios. And when I'm around there, I'm super happy. I also think it's important in whatever you're doing that you realize there's always going to be some parts of it that you might not enjoy as much, and sometimes those are steps you need to take to get to the things that you do want. And like I said, we're really lucky that nowadays with the internet, or the creator economy, and how everything can be done online and with a phone, basically, that you have the possibility to do this. Really, anyone. Basically, like, for me, that's all I've used, really. All my businesses are based on the internet and the phone. I can do the talent management fully through the internet and the phone, especially nowadays with Zoom and everything. I can almost fully do that through that. Same with the Airbnb management stuff. Like, I rarely ever go to the houses anymore themselves. So everything can be done remotely by outsourcing, handyman, you don't have to go yourself. So it's like everything can be coordinated from your computer and from your phone. And that's for so many different businesses, which is amazing. A lot of times what you're going to be pursuing first is financial freedom, right? Especially if you're starting out. You probably won't be pursuing time freedom then, because you have a lot of time, usually. Then time freedom and financial freedom would probably be about the same. You need enough money to be able to start working on the time freedom. The first goal is usually the financial freedom, and getting to your business or side hustle, whatever it is you're doing, get that to a point where it can pay your living expenses. And as you go along, you can start outsourcing. You start, and I especially if you have a time freedom priority, what I would highly recommend is, as soon as you can invest, I would definitely invest into a team member and then expand that. Because as soon as you can outsource and delegate things to other people, then you start buying time back, right? And that's what you're doing with your money, with your financial freedom. You're buying time back. Now you're starting to get time freedom. And because this is all online, you also have location freedom. And that opens you up. That opens you up to either, if you're already doing what you want to do and this business is what you want to do, then it opens you up to grow this exponentially. Especially when you add team members, all of a sudden your time's free. All of a sudden you can work on the business and growing it. And now your business grows a lot faster than it initially does. That's amazing. So that's one thing that you can do. Or maybe this business is something that you really only just do for location, time, all the freedom things that I've been talking about. And that's okay too. I don't always think that you necessarily have to have both overlap. Ideally, yes, but it doesn't always have to overlap. So you can also use what you're building to get to a level where you have all these freedoms and you can pursue maybe something that you're really interested in, but that doesn't maybe make money initially or very much. Like, let's say you're pursuing art, or you love painting or music or making films like I do. A lot of times when you're doing stuff like that, it doesn't make money for a while, And especially those industries, because so many people pursue those and there's a lot of people doing it for free or very little money, it's hard to make money in those industries. So a lot of times you have to have that financial side of your life handled so you can pursue more of this like I'm doing right now. I can pursue filmmaking because I have everything else handled financially, that's taken care of. So I have those freedoms, you know, and that's what, at this point in my life, that's what I have these businesses for, is to be able to pursue, at this point, my filmmaking, which is what I'm really passionate about right now. So I think that's okay too. So I think it's about figuring out what you want and what you want to pursue, but to even get to that, to even get to knowing what you really want, you do have to have some freedom. You have to get out of survival mode. And that's why I think sometimes when people are talking about follow your passion, follow this, do this, it's like, yeah, that's great when you have the freedom to do that. But when you're in survival mode, it's tough to think about those things, and definitely tough to think about them clearly. So I think you need to get into those freedoms first so that you can start clearly thinking what you're passionate about, what you really want to pursue. And that's just one way to do it, but that's the way that I did it. And I want to give that example for like actors and filmmaking, just because that's the industry, especially that I'm in right now, and I've managed actors for 10 years. It's really hard in that industry in general, because not a lot of people that make a comfortable living in that industry, and it's a very feast or famine type of industry. Like if an actor is a series regular, then he's working a whole season, he makes a lot of money potentially. But then he could also not work for 2-3 years, and then, you know, you're back in survival mode. So in that industry especially, a lot of people are in survival mode, and that's incredibly hard, especially if you're working 40-50 hours a week on a day job, like waiting tables or whatever it is. That takes a lot of energy, and it actually does take away from your art. So trying to get these freedoms will also in that way enhance and help your art in a lot of ways. And when you're running, let's say your internet business or side hustle, whatever you're doing to make money basically and take care of your financial side, you want to, like I said, delegate as quickly as possible, especially if art, you create something creative, is your main thing. You want to be able to have more time for that. The best thing you can do is invest in the right team members. That's a skill, again, you learn by trial and error in a lot of ways. And there are things you can learn through books and courses that definitely speed up the process, but you'll still have to trial and error. And the great thing is what you learn there directly translates, again, to whatever you're probably doing creatively, unless it's like a completely solo thing. If you're a writer by yourself, painting, you're doing that by yourself, that's a little different. But if you're, let's say, a filmmaker, like for me, when I'm producing something, there's a lot of people management. There's a lot of hiring the right people, where it's even more important to hire the right people, because you really don't have a lot of time, if any, to ever replace someone. So your movie suffers if you make the wrong hiring choice for anyone. So it's even a bigger deal than maybe a business where, yeah, it slows you down, but you can replace them. You can actually just ruin your movie by the wrong hires. So it's great because these skills that you're learning here basically for your financial freedom here, all those skills translate to that area. So they have for me. So it has helped me a lot in hiring better, and I feel like in general I've been very happy with the hiring for the movies. And that's hard, you know, but if you learn that skill and you learn to see who would work best with who, and if they would fit well with the culture that you're trying to create, that's a super valuable skill. So it just accelerates what you're doing there. That's what I would highly recommend, especially for the people that are pursuing, you know, music, art, filmmaking, paint, whatever it is, especially those industries. I would really, really highly recommend starting your own business as well, even if it's completely separate from your art, just because it's so valuable. And a lot of times, a lot of artists or creative people, they don't want to do that because they think it takes away from that, but it doesn't. It actually enhances what you're doing. It makes it better. It gives you more time to spend on it. So like, yes, you might need to sacrifice a couple of months, especially to get it started, but the goal should be to get to a business that produces, let's say, 10K a month, where you're comfortable and you can sometimes invest some of that into real estate, so it's a longer term income, or you can invest it back into your art if that's what you want to do. And that's all something that you will have the luxury of doing if you start your own business that makes at least 10K a month. And that's why I highly recommend that every artist should also really be an entrepreneur, not just, and you are in a lot of ways, especially as an actor, musician, you are an entrepreneur in some ways, because you have to learn all aspects of that business especially nowadays. You can't just be fully dependent on someone. I think the best thing you can do is actually learn business to also take care of yourself that way, so you can basically be an entrepreneurial artist, I would say. And I think that should be something that everyone does nowadays. And the great thing is then you don't have to worry about making decisions based on money for your art, because you already have your financial business. You have something that you're doing for money. So you don't have to take on a terrible role, or you don't have to take on a role you're not comfortable taking on, or anything like that. And the famous example of someone that did that is Arnold Schwarzenegger, and this was before internet days, so even more impressive. But Arnold Schwarzenegger, he was actually a millionaire already before he was a movie star, and not through his bodybuilding, because that didn't pay a lot, to be honest, and even his supplements and stuff like that. It did okay probably, but probably didn't make a lot, it sounded like. But his bricklaying business, that made a lot of money. So he had a bricklaying business, and he probably wasn't that passionate about bricklaying, but he did that to make money so that he could do what he wanted artistically. He knew he wanted to be a leading man. They wanted to put him in these little villain roles that he had no interest in doing and wouldn't make him who he became. So he had the luxury of saying no to things while he was going for this, because he had the financial side taken care of. And I know from his story that money that he made, he also invested into real estate and built long-term wealth way before he became a famous actor. So if he was doing that back then, pre-internet days, and now there's even more available to you to be able to make money on the side. So I think everyone should do that, and I think definitely read his book if you get a chance. It's even if you like him or don't like him, it doesn't really matter. It's just a super interesting book, and I think will open your eyes to what's possible as a creative, as an artist, or whatever your main passion is. Because you don't have to only do that. You are allowed to do something entrepreneurial on the side that actually enhances all that. And I think for me, that's what freedom is. It's just being able to pursue more of what you want fully. Anyway, I'll talk to you guys next week. Let me know what you think below on any comments. Welcome, obviously. I answer all comments, and I'll see you guys next week.